All righty, to round out this portion of our program, we have Caren McNamara, and she is here from Conscious Container. And she founded this as a benefit corporation to bring reusable, refillable glass bottles back to the United States, building infrastructure and economy of scale to reduce single-use packaging waste and climate impacts. These systems exist around the world, and we need to enable this infrastructure here in the United States now. So you've got the blue button here, and then your timer is that woman.
Excellent. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to share with you where we are going. And again, I'm Caren McNamara, and I founded Conscious Container to bring refillable glass bottles back into our US infrastructure and economy. And I just have a question for all of you. Who has seen these systems around the world? I know you're from Germany, so you have seen them. So well, there's a fair amount of folks. So really what Conscious Container is working to do is take those learnings and bring them back here into the United States. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the global systems and then what Conscious Container is doing. And then lastly, what is the ask that I have of all of you? So let's just go through the numbers, and I'm going to run through this quickly with our 5 minutes, hopefully. Is around the world, 94 countries have refillable, returnable systems. And within those systems, 30% of the beverages sold are returnable or refillable. And that word is used interchangeably. Within those systems, glass bottles are designed to be reused about 50 times. And then PET is also a reusable bottle, and those are designed to be reused 30 times. In Germany, there is actually an example, because legislation is a really big part of how these systems operate. In Germany, they now have a 70% refillable quota for beverage containers, specifically plastic in this case. And the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has done a lot of studies, and one of them they came out with recently is that if we just turned 20% of the PET bottles around the world into refillables, that is a $10 billion business opportunity. And really, the reason these systems exist around the world, they exist because they're profitable. Having all the sustainability and all the other benefits, those are now coming into full view. So Coca-Cola invested $425 million into their PET returnable system in South America, as an example. We know through studies that these bottles, and Jules talked about it earlier also, they reduce emissions and waste. And there are studies that speak to that. And then these large corporations, global corporations and regionals, are setting sustainability targets that are now including reusables, refillables as part of that target, to meet that target. So what are some of the value propositions of refillables? First of all, refillable bottles cost less. That's why these systems exist. The more they turn, the more profitable, the more gross margin these systems have. Number two, there's a Reloop had a report that talked about the carbon emission savings. A refillable glass bottle has an 85% lower carbon footprint than a single-use glass bottle. And that refillable glass bottle has a 70% lower carbon footprint than a single-use PET bottle, and a 57% lower carbon footprint than a single-use aluminum can. And also, these systems these refillable systems are going to be they're going to minimize these mandates that are all coming. EPR, deposit systems, and one of the countries, I can't remember which one, they're going to put deposits, taxes in Europe on those bottles. But if you have a refillable bottle, it's no tax. So the other piece that we feel really strongly about at Conscious Container is that if you look at the scrap value of glass and you look at a refillable system, there's gross margin in there. And that's for all of you. And that's, we're a benefit corporation. It's about how we make sure that across the spectrum of stakeholders, let's make this equitable. And then the last thing is that we have a supply chain challenge. I know in glass, we've seen it in aluminum. And if we start to use refillable systems, moving those assets, not waste, in a circular motion regionally, then the supply chain is not so fragile as it is right now. So let's talk about conscious container. So I've been working on this for quite a while. I have an absolutely fantastic team, and we are launching this business in a B2B space. B2C is a challenge, and there's a lot of innovation going on, but we are working in the wine industry. So what we're going to be doing is across California, we package 420 million cases of wine annually here in California. And within that, the industry conservatively has a 1.5% wastage right on the production line. And so what we're going to do is we are already committed to working with certain wineries here in Northern California to collect that 1.5%. We're going to sort through those. We're going to grab those bottles that have no labels on them. And we're going to wash and resell those back to the small wineries who are literally calling us in desperation for bottles right now. So what this does is we're turning the engine on. And really, this is just the start. We are working with, I had a conversation last week with Coca-Cola. We're going to be working in all the categories of beverage, but we're going to start with what I call the low-hanging fruit. And I just want to talk a little bit also when it comes to conscious container and what we've done. We've been a catalyst in this space, and I've heard some folks talk about legislation and so forth. So I just want to walk through the successes and the momentum that we have gained in the space of reuse. First of all, Cal Recycle awarded us a $500,000 grant, greenhouse gas reuse grant, specifically for refillable wine bottle program. I also work closely with the legislative team in the successful passing of AB 962. That means that it's going to take a couple years to get in place, right? But that AB 962 says that refillable glass CRV bottles can now be separated so that we can take them and wash them and have them refilled. They will not be crushed. And I think that's two really big points here in California that says we are ready to bring returnable bottles back. Also, we're working with several wineries on refillable pilots. I also feel very strongly, because we're an innovator, and like the program that Jules has with AI, is we're working with B2C folks that have innovation like Olin's that are really going to help us move forward on how we incent consumers and retailers and the whole supply chain. How do we incent them all to make sure that we get those bottles back? And then the last thing is that Conscious Container has worked with glass manufacturers to design industry standard glass bottles for beer and wine. And as Jules talked about, that's the utopian world, is that we can move those bottles around amongst producers without, a one-to-one. And really, I have an ask, and that is, I want you all to consider and bring refillable, reusable into your narrative. And that's a lot of the work that I've done on federal bills. And when we had AB 962, it's like, it is a possibility, and bring it into your narrative, and let's talk and let's partner here in Northern California. With any of you who would like to talk to us, is how do we collectively move the needle into this marketplace? And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Super on time and everything. All right, we're going to take a couple questions for the in-person audience here. We got questions? Okay, well, I have a question. So what is the volume of right now that your goal of is you were saying 1.5% of the bottles that you're planning to pilot? Like, what are we talking about? Is that a case, or is that like 10,000 bottles? Like, what's
so the math? Not always my favorite topic, but no. I do have the number for this. So 1.5% wastage is over 43 million bottles annually here in California are wasted on the production line. Now, most of those go to the recycling system, but and we will determine as we start to work with those quantities, how many of those bottles we can actually wash, inspect and wash and then resell. So that's to be discovered.
Okay, I think Arthur has a question.
We had a wine bottle washing company here in California. I don't know if they're still operating or not. They were up in What? Encore bottle? See, what happened was the wineries all went to custom-made bottles. They got into all kinds of every different variety of wine had a different bottle shape. We used to sort bottles in the early 80s
Yeah.
at a drop-off center in Oakland that I ran. But it got so complicated, just people gave it up. The other thing is that the bottles going through the curbside truck get all scratched up. People don't want to buy a bottle that's got scratches on it, not in America. Over.
So yes, there's been attempts in California previously to do this. In fact, Wine Bottle Renew, Bruce Stevens is actually is part of the Conscious Container leadership team. So really, in short, this is where you want to go into industry standard bottles, right? So there's a suite of bottles based on varietals. So that's what we have designed is a suite, and we're actually working with the wine industry to really determine what those bottles types are. And then the second piece is that, yeah, you only want a limited amount of bottles, number one. Number two, the wine bottles, the larger the bottle, the better the unit economics for the economics of all of this. And that's why we're starting in a B2B space. And I can tell you there was a refillable wine bottle program done in Spain. And then there's actually Diana Sasis, who does winemaking in France and here. She, with the Porter Protocol, is also doing a refillable wine bottle program. And our conversations with a lot of the industry leaders says, they want to go do this because this is the last mile. 18 to 30% of the carbon footprint in a wine bottle or any kind of bottle is just in the actual glass bottle itself. So, we're trying to create the momentum. It's there. There's still a lot of work to be done.
We have a question over here.
Hello. What is considered a washed bottle?
So in the definition, are you thinking of AB 962 and how that's going to roll out, or just a general statement, just generally? So a wash bottle, so these systems are used around the world. You go through, these are industrial bottle washers where the bottle goes in, it goes through a caustic soak, it goes through rinsing, and when it comes out, it goes through an inspector to ensure there's no, glass bits and scrapes and such. And to me, that's the definition of a wash bottle. I think as reuse systems become, we're starting to come to see cups and plates and all of that, is that I think we have to be really careful to make sure that this system has a very high standard. I mean, the system that they have in Oregon, it's running through a caustic wash and an inspector. So I am staying very, very close to the rulemaking of AB 962 with Cal Recycle to ensure we don't get short circuited and just say, hey, it's sanitized. That is not going to cut the mustard.
Let's get a question from our online community, if we could, please.
This question is from Caitlin Johnston. What do you think about the possibility of refillable glass bottles for other beverages?
Absolutely. We're starting in the wine industry because I say it's the low-hanging fruit for a variety of reasons, but absolutely. We did an accelerator program with Anheuser-Busch, Coca-Cola, Molson Coors. We talked to them. I can tell you all these producers want this system here. And it's a matter of figuring out how do we get the economics right. And I actually believe that that's this community working in partnership that we can begin to turn that engine on. They're going to want to drop their bottles into our program as soon as we turn that on. I will tell you, we're in our final stages of raising capital if anybody's interested in joining us on that part of our journey. But these large beverage producers want this system because of the gross margin that they experience around the world.
Thank you so much. All right, folks, we are heading to break. And at this point, we are going to have a 15-minute break. I'm looking at my watch and I'm seeing that it is 2:35. So I'd like you please back here by 2:50. Did I do that math right? I think I did. 2:50 here back for the last part of our program.